So, welcome everybody. I'm going to be talking today about a sometimes mysterious process in an area that many companies struggle with getting right and building a real process around, which is setting pricing for their products. And just as a little bit of background, I teach at Tufts at the Gordon Institute around product management and leadership. And I've had a 25 plus year career in product management and product development, mostly in software and software as a service. Most recently, I was at Oracle after an acquisition of a SaaS company I helped found called Dyn. And in that role, I was responsible for about 20 products within Oracle's cloud product line, and including pricing. So I have a lot of war wounds from this process. So first of all, I would like to thank the ProductCamp sponsors. I do want to make sure that everybody recognizes their investment in helping us build the product management discipline and give you guys training that you need in order to be effective in your job. So please thank the sponsors. I want to kick off with a little bit about what happens when you don't do pricing correctly. And there are two things that end up happening. One, you miss opportunities. So you don't align your pricing to the strategy of the company. You don't make pricing decisions based on data. You don't tie your pricing model and the metrics of your model to customer value, so then the customer has a disconnect. You don't segment and create packages to match the need and the price point. So you have one single product, one single price point, when in fact you might have multiple ways of deriving value out of the product. And you don't adjust pricing over time. Those are some of the missed opportunities by not having a formal pricing process. And what that results in is you don't maximize the value of your product from a business perspective. You frustrate customers and create opportunities for them to leave and go to a competitor that's easier to work with. And you may end up using heavy amounts of discounting or promotions if your pricing doesn't match the value you're creating. And a very important point about pricing is we spend a lot of time as product managers and product professionals trying to figure out how to sell more of what we have. An important lever is price. As an example, a 10% increase in average price, which might be upselling, bigger packages, add-on sales. If you just can increase the average sale price by 10%, you have to sell 20% less new customers, which is a huge shift in how you focus the way you think about it. So think about that every time you talk about lowering price or putting a bigger discount out, is that you're actually increasing the amount of new customers that you have to bring on board. So let's talk a little bit at the high level what the selling price, our pricing process is. And this is a process that I've used many times, and I've used it over and over. And it's pretty simple. First of all, you have to understand what the goal of your pricing is. And we'll talk a little bit about that in an upcoming slide. You have to really understand what the customer actually values. How do they view the value of your product in either lowering their costs, increasing their efficiency, increasing their speed, solving a compliance issue? You have to really understand what is the value you're creating by them integrating your product. Then you have to, with that understanding, need to understand if you can make money at this. So really digging in underneath at the unit cost level and understanding what it is that you can actually afford or put out as a price and still make money. Then you have to look at the pricing environment. So what is the competitors doing? What are alternatives? What are you going to go through a channel? All the things around the go-to-market and the market conditions that you're selling your product into. Then the part where everybody kind of goes to immediately, go skip the other 4 steps, is what is the price in the pricing model? So how are you going to create the packages, and what kind of pricing model are you going to use? Are you going to use a unit? You're going to use a subscription model? You're going to use a usage-based model? So those are the key steps there. And then the last step is understanding the pricing tactics. How are you going to present the price and value? How are you going to talk about price and the terms and conditions and the support programs around the product? So it's putting it all together in a way that's consumable and understandable by the customer. And this is a key step that many people miss, is you have to come back around on a periodic basis and reevaluate the whole value stream of your pricing and see if there's opportunities to further enhance the pricing, look at new packaging of the pricing. And so when we talk about pricing objectives, they're really around these kind of main areas. And this is really a strategic question. Are you pricing the product to gain market share? Are you pricing the product to maximize profitability? And you're going to forego market share to really nail the max profitable types of customers? Are you trying to land and expand? So you're trying to go in at a low price so that you can enter a market and then add other products to expand the market. Are you trying to accelerate growth? So maybe you want to lower your price or position the product in a different market segment to accelerate growth. And last, which is the very common one, which is to meet a competitive threat. And then that comes into a way of thinking about your price position and the objective of your pricing. And this is a simple rubric, pretty common out there, is look at the pricing, either low or high relative to market, versus your differentiation, low to high. And where most people want to operate or typically operate is in the premium or penetration area. So you may have a higher quality product, better featured, but you want to gain market share. So you're going to use penetration pricing. So you're going to go in under the current solution. If you have a high quality, highly differentiated product, you might also go for premium, where you want to get the maximum profitability by focusing on those customers that value your product the most. Skimming is when you have a commodity type product or a low featured product, but you find a particular area that you can get additional pricing from over the market, and you skim the market. And the last is commodity, low featured, low price economy. So that's the kind of commodity segment. So particularly in B2B and B2B type products, most of the pricing is focused around the premium and penetration. Now, in order to understand the value that the price is to the customer, there are several quantitative tools, and I'm just giving you a survey of 3 of them, but there are many other ones. And this is where you're getting real data about the price point and the sensitivity of the price point to the customer. So in the product discovery phase, when you're envisioning the product and you're doing the initial product discovery, getting the core requirements, understanding the business model, you should assess whether there's price uncertainty. If there's not a reference product, a similar product, or you're a little unsure about the product, you would use price sensitivity type quantitative models. And I'm going to describe that a little bit more. But basically, you're going to understand where are the price points where this kind of product or this kind of solution is too expensive and where it's too cheap. And you're trying to find that middle ground, which is the acceptable price range. If you have pretty good idea of the pricing zone, then you might do a monodic survey, which really gets at the intent of the person or the customer to buy. And in this case, you have a questionnaire where you ask them, at this price point, would you be highly likely to buy, slightly likely to buy, not likely to buy, would never buy? And basically, you look at different price points with different segments of the survey, and you get an idea of where the optimal price is for your product. So in this case, you can see at the second price point is where you would want to price the product to get maximum take rate on the product. And the last kind of analysis is used to kind of help create the packaging. What features will go with what level of price point? And that's where you use a co-join analysis. And basically what you do is you create 3 or 4 different variants of features and price, and you let the customer or the survey participant pick which one of those 3 they would choose. And what you use is a broad sample base, and you give them different combinations of these. You run it through the analysis, and it'll give you an optimum price point and feature mix that you can use into building up your packages. So those are 3 common tools used in quantitative pricing analysis. And those go along with your customer interviews and looking at the market. So I'm going to go a little bit deep dive into the price sensitivity method just to show you as an example. And basically what you do is you describe the product, and then you give them a survey tool like Qualtrics or almost any survey tool, and have them rate at what price point would this solution that you describe be too cheap, where you'd say that it's less, it's the price of it seems to make it too much of a too cheap and not valuable. At what point is it a bargain? At what point would you have to look at it and do analysis? And at what point is it way too expensive? You do this for hundreds, maybe 1,000 different survey participants that would understand the product and its value in their particular situation. You might look at segmenting the survey population by geography, size of company, vertical, so that you get a broad range of survey results. And then you basically use analytics to create a curve. And basically the curve has lines for each of those: cheap, bargain, evaluate, too expensive. And then you look for crossover points. So in this particular survey, which was about 100 people, 100 survey participants, this is the curve that we got. And basically what you get is a range of acceptable price and then a range of optimal price. And that bounds you now into what the customer perception is of value of your product and price point. So again, those are examples of quantitative pricing surveys that you can implement. The next piece of a pricing process is to really understand the competition in the market. And this can be complicated because the list price of a product may be not what its actual average selling price is. If there are additional add-ons to the product that you don't have visibility into, so you may have difficulty getting at the actual price, but you need to get some idea of the price model, the metric that they use the price, and then you do an analysis of features and price to understand where you fit and whether you have a premium product, whether you have a product that is basically going to go in at the same value level. And then relating that to our earlier discussion, you then decide whether you want to penetrate a market, so you want to go underneath the competition in order to gain market share, or if you want to preserve the value of your product and sell at a premium price and sell the value, sell the quality. Now, as we move farther into the process, now we need to consider inside the pricing model, how are we selling the product? For instance, are we selling it through a channel? And if you do that, you need to make sure you build into your pricing model the margin for your channel partners, your distribution partners, and your retail partners or your channel partner. Very important point, because if you don't do that, you're going to end up with missing your margin targets, because you're going to miss the fact that you have to give margin into the channel as they sell it. The other part is, depending on your selling model, what is your discounting strategy? And so you need to build into the price model what you expect the expectations are of the customer and of the sales process around discounts and promotions. One thing I would suggest is that you be very careful about discounting and understand when you're using it and when you're not. Are you using discounting because you have a pricing problem? Are you using discounting because you're going after the wrong customers that don't value your product properly? Because sometimes you might find that actually by being more controlled about your discount, you'll raise your average price, increase your profitability, and you'll be selling to customers that actually want the product, and you're not trying to force them into using the product. So again, be very careful and watch carefully. As a product manager, you should be watching carefully what's going on in your discounting process through sales. Another key element of pricing is the terms and conditions and the cost those have in your product and the value they provide. So one area is around payment terms, where depending on your payment terms, you may be actually have, basically you're fronting the customer for 30 days or 40 days of the product costs. So you need to factor that into your pricing model. It may be a differentiator in the way you have payment terms and the types of ways people can pay you. So there may be actually differentiated, maybe feature capabilities in your payment. Similarly with support, you may have your basic support, but what are your upsell support packages and how do you price those? And then how you factor them into your overall pricing model. There are contractual terms, about the term of the contract, your return policy, liability, which also need to be factored into the cost to deliver the service to make sure you recoup those costs when you set the pricing model. And now more and more, there are whole provisions in the terms and conditions around security that you need to factor into how you look at your pricing model. The next is a very important step, which gets at moving up the average price, which is how you package and how you create bundles of features and capabilities in a software product or the tiers of hardware product to address the different customer needs and to maximize how much value you get out of your pricing model. So ways of understanding the pricing and packaging, one is around what we talked about before, the co-joint preference surveys, where you'll get an idea based on the way the customers react to the feature versus cost or price perspective. What are the bundles of features that are most important to certain segments of your customer base? Another is to do use case analysis. So maybe after the product's been out a while and you get talk with customers and understand their use cases, you may find that there's particular use cases that are highly valued by the customer, and you may want to actually create a package around those features, market it to that use case, and maybe elevate the price for that particular use case because it's so valuable for those customers. And the third way you look at packaging is around segment analysis. So maybe there's a different price point feature set for small businesses versus a large business. You might have slightly different features and price points for different verticals around your product. Even though it's basically the same core product, you may have different features you add for certain verticals, and you should be able to adjust pricing around those because it's basically a new product. And it all comes around a very common model, especially in software as a service, is good, better, best packaging. So there's always a basic product set that maybe even is freemium, and then you upsell customers to better and best, and you build additional revenue and generally more margin as you move up the value chain. And that, again, going back to the original idea around pricing, if you do this mix right, you can actually increase the overall average price that people are paying for your product, and then be able to reach profitability, the profitability goal you want with fewer customers. And then the last part, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here, but the actual pricing model. So looking at what is the unit that you're going to use to do measurement around price. So what's the usage measurement? And then is it a subscription? Is it a one-time? Is it a license fee? Is it a statement of work, time and materials? So these are all in the execution of how you position and create the actual pricing model that you're going to take to the customer, and that's what they'll actually buy. The last slide I have is really around what is the role of a product manager and product management in that process. And this is not universal, but from my experience, this has been kind of the role that product managers played. They've been, as part of the overall product process and bringing a product to market, they are responsible for development of the pricing model. Generally, though, it is a cross-functional process that requires inputs from all kinds of stakeholders across the business. So sales, finance, marketing, manufacturing, supply chain, all factor into developing the pricing model to hit the business objectives and to make sure you can actually meet the needs of the customer in the market. The product manager generally runs the cross-functional process and then builds the analysis and justification and the justification and pricing model deck that is usually gone to some kind of approval process. Either it's a formal pricing approval or something you have to take by the CFO, but you're generally the one who will bring the pricing model to senior executives to get signed off on. The second, which is an area that we tend to fall back on and forget about till it bites us, is it should be part of your daily or your life as a product manager to monitor the performance of price. In addition to all the other things that you're monitoring, like usage, customer acquisition, all that, how is pricing being felt by the customers and what's their reaction? Are you getting feedback on your pricing? Are you having to discount a lot? Are you seeing a new competitor come in at a different price point? Are customers seeing the value value being matched by the price you're selling? So you need to be continually going back to customers, looking at the data, understanding the competition so that you can adjust your pricing over time so that you don't miss an opportunity or get sideswiped by a competitor entering the market. So just to kind of wrap it all back up, I'm proposing that pricing doesn't have to be this mysterious process that happens at the end of a product cycle and you rush to do it and you usually base it off of your costs or you base it off of what the competitor is doing. It can be a much more formal process that uses data and really focuses on deriving the most value based on what your objectives are for your company and provides the best value to the customer. So you're tying the value you're creating with your product to the price. With that, I can turn it over to questions, and I can talk to you about any questions you might have.
Hey, thank you, Scott. I'm not seeing a ton of questions in here.
All right.
So we'll remind people, please enter your questions in the chat. If you prefer, I think you can unmute. Here we go. We've got two. Can you see them?
Yep.
Okay.
So the first question is, how do you test different pricing models against each other, such as monthly fee versus one-time fee? So first of all, you can do it in the pre-product phase by showing those as scenarios when you go do your customer interviews and get feedback even before the product's built. The other thing you can do is segment your market. So maybe a certain region or a certain segment of the market, you try different price points, maybe a subset of it. It's almost like an A/B test. If you have an online product, it's even easier. You can show 5% of your people coming to your website one price model, and the other 95% show your standard price model, and see if you have a difference in the take rate and the conversion rate for that other pricing model. So those are kind of two ways I can think of that you can try it. So you can use A/B type testing for pricing also. How do you approach changing the pricing model when one is already set? That is very challenging. One is to create new products or new packages around a new set of functionality or a different positioning of the product, and therefore you're not selling the same exact product that you have the set price in. The other is how you contract and describe pricing in your contract is really important. So the terms and conditions around that may restrict you from not touching the pricing for a certain period of time. But my recommendation is to look at slightly changing the product definition and the package, and that's how you adjust pricing. Awesome, Preza. Any tips on how to get stakeholders to buy into the value-based pricing strategy versus cost plus? Interesting. I think one is around showing them case studies, which there are many of folks that have implemented value-based and shown very high return on that investment as far as profitability and even customer satisfaction. The other is to pilot it with a product and then show the results of really understanding the value point and showing that you can get higher margins by tying it to customer value. Are there special considerations for B2B environments where the people making the purchasing decision are different from the users of the product? Excellent point. Anybody who's doing product discovery phase of products knows that you need to talk to all the stakeholders in the customer, and the economic buyer in many cases is not the user of the product. So generally, I would recommend that you target your price surveys and your pricing interviews that are focused around that to the economic buyer, where you're going to focus on the return on investment, the efficiency, the cost savings of the product, and less on the features and the user experience kind of stuff. Hope that helps. But when I talked about doing pricing surveys, you want to target those surveys at the economic buyer, not the end user. Any recommended approaches for a product moving from a perpetual license to a subscription model? Yes. So this is a pretty common challenge or opportunity that companies have who have been selling licensing either to on-prem equipment or even hosted solutions that are license-based, and they want to shift to subscription. This is a challenge not only in the pricing realm, as you all know, but many different dimensions of the company, how you sell, how you support, more emphasis on technical operations because you actually have to run the service for them. So if you're trying to transition from a perpetual to a subscription, what you need to do is be able to show them the value of the product in the perpetual and the subscription model, and then I think in many cases you need to incentivize them to come over, either with discounting, with maybe a period of time where the subscription doesn't start to match up to their license window, converting the remaining license time frame to subscription. So there are many things you can do, but it is actually the hardest part is transitioning perpetual license owners and converting them into a subscription model. I think out of all the things, it's easier to sell to new customers your value prop and the subscription model than it is to convert a license. Yeah, and I agree. Adobe's done this brilliantly. The other one is Office 365. I think now my guess is 95% of their customers are on the subscription model. A decade ago, 5% were on subscription. Excellent. Looks like the questions are tailing off. And my slides will be available. And there is a video online, so you should be able to review this. And if you have any questions, reach out to me on LinkedIn. And I think that's it, unless anybody else has questions.